It would be natural to assume that, after the Great Recession in the Northern Hemisphere, the working class would not have had their best years in the American continent. High rates of unemployment, low GDP, and low industrial production in countries like America, Canada, and Chile did not signal a bright future ahead. However, the Great Depression did not have such a terrible economic effect on the entirety of Latin America. For instance, Brazil saw an increase in its industrial production and, consequently, in its GDP during the 1930s. These advents can be better explained by looking further into political figures of the time, the most prominent of them being the General Getúlio Vargas. Getúlio Dornelles Vargas was a Brazilian military leader who took power after opposing the elected president Julio Prestes after the 1930 elections. Once in office, Vargas implemented several modernizing policies, which included the creation of new ministries, including the Ministry of Industry and Commerce and the Ministry of Labor. Like every other populist leader, Vargas protected himself, appealing to the working class by fulfilling their wishes. He was the first president to give the people work permits and to also indirectly create links between unions and the president. Both of these policies still stand up to this day. Populism also requires a massive influence of propaganda, and, as one of the early Latin American populists, Vargas used the radio to fulfill this task. He created the Department of Press and Propaganda, aiming to force radio stations to publicize his great governmental achievements to establish a reliable body of voters. Under the department, every radio station had to broadcast Brazil Hour, a 1-hour-length radio show that consisted of public announcements, speeches, and reports of the government's doings. Vargas' attempt to brainwash Brazilians through the media was in no way as successful as his policies. Still, within a couple of decades, Latin America would discover the real power of the media as well as that of populism. Juan Domingo Perón was, like Vargas, a renowned South American military leader who got involved in a coup in the 1930s and 1940s. The difference is that Perón suffered the coup. On October 9, 1945, he was disposed of his position as Secretary of Work and thrown into jail, causing the revolt of his supporters. A popular uprising took to the streets of Buenos Aires, meeting at the Plaza de Mayo to demand Perón's release. A crucial figure at this time was a young woman by the name of Maria Eva Duarte, who both passionately defended Perón and furiously attacked his enemies. The public uprising got untamable, causing the Perón's enemies to release him from prison under the condition that he disperse the people. Within 11 days, he was free. In the following year, Juan Perón not only became the president of Argentina, but he also won his most valuable political apparatus, his new wife, Eva Perón. She was already known for her career as a radio actress, and soon learned to use her knowledge of the area, as well as her acclaimed voice, to endorse him at every opportunity she had. Like Vargas, Perón also tried to shape the public opinion through the media. According to Goldstein, the Peronist government not only used newspapers such as La Época and Democracia as tools in the maintaining of their support, but also went as far as to purchase media outlets, ensuring political alignment and breaking down external pluralism. However, Perón succeeded in his task of using the media to effectively manipulate his people. He could not have chosen a better partner to dominate the media outlets in his favor. The radio, and especially the tango, had served as consolation to the Argentine people during a década infame, which, as Alec Dawson describes, was characterized by deeply cynical politics, punctuated by right-wing military coups. Perón knew how to speak the language of tango, and Eva had the voice that enchanted millions throughout the country. Together, they brainwashed the Argentine people through propaganda, from kindergarten to elderly homes. Everybody loved the Perons. They made things such as freedom and working rights a staple of their brand. To go against them was to go against the improvement of Argentina. In conclusion, their colligation produced results that Vargas could only have dreamed of having 15 years earlier. Perón's intelligence, political strategy, and charisma certainly played a role in the creation of Peronism, but some believe that its power is intrinsically linked to Eva. She had a proximity to the masses the elite neither had nor seemed to want, and she knew how to lead them better than Perón. She despised the oligarchs, called them traitors. At the same time, she praised the descamisados and claimed them as the real Argentine people. In 1948, Evita created the Fundación Eva Perón, destined to help the female section of the Argentine workforce. She gave them sewing machines and new shoes, built hospitals, created a nursing school that graduated more than 5,000 nurses, and much more. Evita was addressing crowds during a period of dramatic advancement of women's rights. This point is well illustrated in her push for women's suffrage, which endeared her to many women, and provided her husband with the loyal voting bloc. When the 1952 elections came, Argentina knew one thing. They wanted Perón in power, and they wanted Evita with him. More specifically, Peronists wanted Evita as vice president, and they would not accept otherwise. Since the previous year, Evita had been suffering from what we now know as cancer. Both she and Perón knew she could not be able to sustain the position as her death was imminent. So, on August 22, 1952, she had the difficult task of facing a ferocious crowd of supporters and declined the position of vice president. She starts her speech as usual, by praising her husband and his followers and degrading the rich and powerful. When she tried to address the issue of her candidacy, the crowd immediately fought back. Evita desperately tries to calm them down, but nothing that she says seems to satisfy them. The back and forth between Evita and the people went on for hours, and allegedly ended up with her agreeing to do as they wished. She would only succeed in announcing her renouncement days later on the radio. Perón won the election, but in that same year he also lost his wife. Evita's last 2 years represent her devotion and sacrifice to the Argentine people, and further contributed to the sanctification of her image. Evita's funeral was the biggest in Argentina's history. Flower shops in Buenos Aires ran out of flowers, and people had to buy from nearby cities to give them to Evita.